Okay, so we've got a pretty interesting collection of materials to dive into today, mostly from websites. And it looks like they're all about marketing to accountants.
Yeah, lots of different strategies and approaches.
Right. So what we really want to do today is, kind of sift through all of that and pull out those absolute key strategies that are going to really help people connect with accountants and turn them into clients.
Yeah, definitely.
Think of this as like a crash course in
Oh,
accounting lead generation. We're going to get to the good stuff.
absolutely. And I think one of the most important things right off the bat is to remember the environment these accountants are working in. I mean, they provide a huge service. They bring financial clarity to businesses and individuals.
For sure.
But they are also dealing with a unique set of pressures and challenges, right? You've got constant deadlines.
Yeah.
You've got a regulatory landscape that's always changing.
Oh, yeah.
And the everyday challenges of managing clients and keeping them organized.
Right. So understanding these kind of inherent struggles they're facing,
Yeah.
that's not just like background information.
Right.
That's the foundation of any successful lead generation effort. You have to know who you're talking to.
Absolutely. You got to start there.
So let's really dig into those hidden struggles that the materials highlight.
Yeah.
It gives us a really clear picture of what a day in the life of an accountant actually looks like.
It does. And it's really interesting how consistently those pain points come up across the different sources. It's like
Mhm.
the overwhelming theme is just this relentless time crunch that they face. I mean, the obvious one is tax season deadlines, right? But even outside of those really intense periods,
Yeah.
just the volume of work,
Right.
often a lot of manual tasks,
Yeah.
like data entry, chasing down documents from clients, it all eats up so much time.
And it's not just the amount of work, it's also the type of work.
Right.
The materials emphasize that keeping up with regulations, that's a huge pressure.
It is. It's like trying to build something on, like shifting sand.
Exactly.
Because the tax code, the compliance rules, everything is in constant flux,
Always changing.
always changing. And, for an accountant, a mistake there can be really serious, right?
Big repercussions.
Financial penalties, damaged client relationships.
Oh, sure.
So the effort just to stay current, to keep learning, is significant.
Yeah.
And that's time that they, could be spending elsewhere in their business.
And that's probably even more acute for smaller firms or people that are just working on their own.
Absolutely.
They don't have big teams
Yeah.
to handle compliance.
Right. They're wearing all the hats.
Right. And then there's the universal headache of getting clients to actually provide the information you need.
Oh my gosh, yes. Every professional has that.
Every single one. It's the bane of existence.
Absolutely.
So the sources all highlight, the impact of late paperwork, managing client expectations that aren't always clear.
Right. And you never know what they're thinking.
Right. And then those like last minute urgent requests,
Yeah.
it just throws their whole schedule into chaos.
Totally.
So without like really good communication systems,
Mhm.
accountants can end up spending way more time chasing information than they do actually using their expertise.
That's such a good point.
So when we're thinking about lead generation, we have to remember we're trying to connect with these people
Yeah.
who are often feeling really squeezed from like multiple directions, right?
Instantly.
Time, regulatory demands, and the whole client management thing.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so understanding those pressure points, that's like our bedrock. Now let's look at some of the proven strategies for success that the materials outline.
Okay. Sound good.
Where does someone even start?
Well, a really good starting point, according to everything we've looked at, is targeted list building.
Okay, so we've talked about list building before,
Right.
but this is not just about like casting a wide net.
No.
It's about being really, really focused.
Absolutely. It's laser focused.
So how do you achieve that level of focus?
So the materials recommend using B2B databases, like ZoomInfo or something similar.
Right.
But then you apply these really granular filters.
Okay.
So think about job titles. You want to be targeting CPAs, tax managers, senior accountants.
Okay.
And then you can layer in other criteria like the size of their firm,
Right.
the specific industry sectors that they serve,
Okay.
and even using really specific keywords to refine your audience even further.
So it's about connecting with the exact right professionals.
Yeah.
The ones who are most likely to need and benefit from what you offer.
Exactly. No wasted effort.
Right. So like sending information about individual tax prep software to the CFO of a, multinational corporation, that would be a complete waste of everyone's time.
Totally. You're speaking a different language at that point.
Exactly. So what comes after building that targeted list?
So then the sources really pivot to the online space, talking about SEO and PPC. And essentially, this is all about making sure that when accounting professionals are actively looking for solutions online, they find you.
Right, so you're making yourself visible.
Exactly. You're showing up in the right places.
Okay, so what does that actually look like in practice?
So for SEO, it's about optimizing your website content
Okay.
with the exact keywords that accountants themselves are likely to use when they're searching for something.
Okay.
So think about phrases like best cloud accounting platforms or tax compliance software.
Got it.
Really specific stuff. And this helps your website rank higher in search results.
Okay, so you're more likely to be seen.
Right. And then with PPC, you're running targeted ads,
Okay.
mainly on platforms like Google,
Yeah.
using those same highly specific keywords.
Okay.
And here, the key is that your ad copy has to be really compelling
Yeah.
and directly address a pain point.
Right. Like what?
Something like reduce audit risk
Oh.
or save time today. And then that ad should direct people to a really focused landing page where they can take the next step.
Got it. So you're not just sending them to your homepage.
No. You want to be specific.
It's a dedicated page for that specific need.
Exactly. Maybe they request a demo or download a resource.
Okay, so you're meeting them where they're actively searching
Right.
and offering something immediately relevant to their needs.
Absolutely. It's all about providing value right away.
Okay. Now, the materials also go into some really specific email marketing programs.
They do.
Can you walk us through those?
Yeah, definitely. So Reach Marketing, one of the sources we're looking at today, offers a few different but kind of related programs.
Okay.
So there's the MQL program, the SQL program, and the SAIL program.
Okay, a lot of acronyms.
Lots of acronyms, but they each have a specific purpose.
All right, so let's break it down. What's the MQL program?
So MQL stands for Marketing Qualified Leads.
Good.
And this is all about attracting those initial, potentially interested prospects
Right.
by offering them something of value. So the example they give is a 2025 tax regulation cheat sheet.
Okay, so it's something really useful.
Exactly. And this valuable resource, sometimes called a lead magnet,
Okay.
is delivered via email to their existing database,
Okay.
which is, accounting professionals.
Right.
So if someone engages with that email, they download the cheat sheet.
Yeah.
They're identified as an MQL.
Okay.
They've shown initial interest.
Got it. So that's like the first point of contact.
Right.
What about the SL program?
So the SL program takes those MQLs and refines them further.
Okay.
So SL stands for Sales Accepted Leads.
Got it.
And here, Reach Marketing applies specific qualification criteria.
Okay.
But the important thing is that these criteria are defined by you
Right.
based on your ideal client profile.
Okay, so you get to decide what makes a good lead.
Exactly.
Right.
So this could include things like the revenue of the accounting firm,
Okay.
the number of employees they have, the specific roles within the firm,
Okay.
or even their expressed interest in particular services.
Right, based on how they've interacted online.
Exactly. So only those MQLs that meet your specific criteria, those are the ones that get passed on to your sales team as Ls.
Okay.
So this prevents your sales team from wasting time
Right.
on leads that aren't a good fit.
They're not going to be chasing dead ends.
Exact.
Okay. And then there's the SQL program.
Right. SQL stands for Sales Qualified Leads.
Okay.
And this is really the most intensive and targeted approach.
Okay.
So it combines high-quality data, very specifically targeted email campaigns,
Okay.
and it even incorporates telemarketing
Oh.
to identify prospects who have a strong, demonstrated intent to purchase.
So they're really close to being ready to buy.
Exactly.
Right.
The ultimate goal is to deliver leads that are truly sales-ready.
Okay, so your sales team is getting really high quality leads at this point.
Absolutely. And what's particularly noteworthy is that the source even mentions that they go as far as scheduling initial meetings for your sales team.
Wow.
Yeah, so your sales team can focus purely on the sales conversation,
Right.
and it significantly increases the likelihood of a successful outcome.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. It's very hands-on. And it's also important to mention that all of these email programs leverage AI-driven targeting and segmentation.
Right, so it's not just like a spray and pray approach.
No. This is very sophisticated.
It's personalized.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a really smart tiered system that nurtures leads
Right.
from that initial interest all the way to being ready for a sales conversation.
Exactly.
And it gets more and more qualified at each stage.
Absolutely.
That's great. Now, the materials also touch on some innovative techniques.
Yeah, some interesting ideas there.
What were the key takeaways?
So they really reinforce the value of niche targeting,
Okay.
specifically emphasizing accounting professionals as a really strong niche to focus on.
Okay, so double down on specialization.
Exactly. Become the expert in that area.
Got it.
And then they also talk about the critical importance of technology utilization.
Okay.
So this includes using CRM systems to track all interactions with potential leads,
Right.
marketing automation tools to streamline communication and nurture those leads effectively,
Okay.
and then the power of data analytics to really understand the behavior and preferences of your target audience.
Right, so you're not just guessing.
No, you're using data to make informed decisions.
You're personalizing based on real information.
Exactly.
Okay, so it all comes back to working smarter, not harder.
Definitely.
Using technology to reach the right people with the right message at the right time.
I like that. That's a good way to put it.
Okay. Now let's dig into the specifics of marketing to specific accounting roles. As this seems absolutely essential
It is.
because the priorities of, say, a CFO are going to be wildly different from those of a tax manager.
Oh, absolutely. They have different responsibilities, different concerns.
Totally. So the materials actually do a really good job of outlining those key distinctions.
They do.
So when you're talking to CFOs, what are the key themes?
So for chief financial officers, the big things are strategic financial planning, robust risk management,
Okay.
and ultimately a really clear return on investment.
So they want to see the bottom line impact.
Exactly. They need to know how it's going to benefit the company financially.
Okay.
So your messaging should be very data-driven,
Right.
clearly illustrate how your product or service can improve their financial performance
Okay.
or streamline their reporting processes,
Got it.
and offering high-level content like white papers or webinars
Okay.
focused on, cutting-edge financial strategies.
Right.
That can be really effective with this audience.
So it's about those big picture strategic impacts.
Absolutely.
Okay. What about accounting managers? What are their primary concerns?
So for accounting managers, the focus really shifts to day-to-day operations.
Okay.
Things like workflow efficiency, boosting team productivity, ensuring compliance.
Well, they're in the trenches.
Yeah, they're dealing with the nitty-gritty.
Right.
They're looking for solutions that will help their teams be more effective.
Okay.
So your marketing should emphasize tools that reduce manual processes,
Okay.
foster better collaboration.
Got it.
Things like targeted product demonstrations or ROI calculators can be really persuasive for them.
Right. So they can actually see the potential benefit.
Exactly. They need to see the numbers.
Okay. What about controllers? What's their perspective?
So controllers are very concerned with the accuracy of financial reporting,
Okay.
the strength of internal controls, and effective budget management.
So they're all about accuracy and control.
Absolutely. They need to know that everything is correct and compliant.
Right.
So when you're marketing to them, your focus should be on those benefits.
Okay.
Enhanced compliance, absolute accuracy. And they tend to appreciate a very direct and functional approach.
Okay.
So avoid anything that's overly promotional or flashy.
Right. They want substance.
Exactly. So provide detailed technical specifications,
Right.
clear integration guides, things like that.
So they know it's going to work seamlessly with their existing systems.
Exactly. And because they're often involved in the implementation process,
Yeah.
clearly outlining the onboarding process and the ongoing support you provide can really alleviate any concerns.
Okay. So they need to know it's not going to be a headache to implement.
Right. They don't want any disruption.
Okay. Now, CPAs, they're dealing with a huge range of client needs,
They are.
especially around tax season.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you effectively reach them?
So with CPAs, you have to acknowledge the intense pressure they're under,
Right.
especially during those peak busy periods.
Yeah.
So the time crunch, the need for automation,
Right.
the absolute necessity of accuracy in all their work.
Yeah, the stakes are high.
They are. So the materials suggest targeting them during the off-peak season. So
Okay.
generally May through October,
Got it.
when they might have a little bit more breathing room.
Right. They can actually think about new things.
Exactly. So offering free tools, checklists, templates,
Okay.
even providing CPE-accredited content can be really effective.
Right. So you're giving them something of value up front.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Building trust, showing your expertise.
And finally, tax managers. What are their main priorities?
So Tax managers are primarily focused on staying ahead of those constantly evolving tax
That's
laws.
because that's their whole world.
It is. It's
Yeah.
always changing.
Yeah.
And then maximizing the efficiency of their tax preparation processes
Okay.
and managing and minimizing audit
So they
risks.
want to be efficient and accurate.
Exactly. They don't want any surprises from the IRS.
Right.
So when you're marketing to them, highlight how your solution can help them navigate complex tax scenarios,
Okay.
understand and implement new regulations. Providing in-depth educational resources can be really helpful.
Okay. Like what?
You know, white papers on recent tax legislation?
Right. Show them you're on top of it.
Exactly. It positions you as a knowledgeable resource.
And what about things like compliance guarantees or success stories?
Absolutely. Those are very persuasive, especially in industries that face a lot of audit scrutiny.
So you're showing them you can deliver.
Right. You've got a proven track record.
Okay. This breakdown by role is so helpful.
It is. It really shows you how important it is to tailor your message.
Yeah. One size fits all does not work in this market.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. The materials also provide some general marketing best practices for accountants.
Some good overarching principle.
What are the key things to remember?
So the big takeaway is that accountants are highly analytical.
Right. They're numbers people.
Exactly. They operate on a foundation of trust.
Okay.
So they respond best to clear, logical value propositions,
Okay.
marketing messages that are backed by data and demonstrable results.
So you have to prove it to them.
Right. No empty claims.
Right.
And communication that's consistently professional.
Okay. So no hype.
No hype, just substance.
Just the facts.
Exactly. And in terms of channels, email marketing is still really strong,
Okay.
particularly during those off-peak months we talked about.
Right. When they have more time to engage.
Exactly. Webinars can be good, targeted LinkedIn campaigns,
Okay.
and even traditional channels like direct mail and industry publications can still work.
Interesting. So it's a mix of old and new.
It is. You need to be where your audience is.
And what about times to avoid reaching out? What are those?
Definitely avoid their peak busy season, which is generally January through mid-April.
Yeah, they'd be slammed.
Absolutely. Don't even try. The best time to reach them is May through October.
Okay, so time your marketing strategically.
Right. And remember, your language should be direct, factual, focused on solutions.
Okay.
Clearly articulate how you can address their pain points.
Got it. So things like reducing audit risk,
Mhm.
freeing up billable hours, improving client service.
Exactly. Those are the things that matter to them.
Right.
And using case studies, testimonials from satisfied clients, industry certifications,
Okay.
all of that can really boost your credibility.
Right. It shows you're the real deal.
Exactly.
The materials also briefly touch on Reach Marketing's background and expertise.
Yeah, they give a little bit of their company history.
What's the key message there?
So they emphasize their 13 years of experience in this market,
Okay.
which shows they really understand the accounting profession.
Right. They've been doing this for a while.
Exactly. And they also highlight that their corporate and sales teams have a lot of pre-existing marketing experience.
Okay.
So it's not just accounting knowledge, they also have marketing expertise.
So they know how to reach this audience effectively.
Right. They've got the best of both worlds.
Okay. So that's reassuring.
Yeah.
And what kind of content really resonates with accountants?
So they're looking for content that's both educational and actionable.
Okay. So not just theory, but practical advice.
Exactly. They want to be able to use what they learn.
Right.
So think about things like industry white papers, how-to guides, webinars, product demonstrations, ROI calculators.
Okay. Lots of different options.
Yeah, there are lots of ways to provide value, and the sources specifically highlight the value of CPE-accredited content.
Right. Because accountants have to complete continuing education credits.
Exactly. So if you can provide content that helps them do that, that's a big win.
Makes sense. Finally, before we wrap up, there were a few accounting market fast facts.
Yeah, some interesting stats.
Were there any that stood out?
So one that I found really interesting is that 98% of accounting professionals are already using AI.
Wow. That's a huge number.
It is. It shows that this is a profession that's really embracing technology.
Right. They're not afraid of new tools.
Exactly. And then the global accounting services market is worth $628 billion.
It's a massive market.
It is. It shows the potential in this sector. And the last stat that I found really interesting is that the industry spends an estimated $24.9 billion on marketing annually.
Wow. That's a lot of money.
It is. It shows that there's a lot of competition to reach this audience.
Right, so you have to be smart about your marketing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so to bring it all together for you, our listener, effectively generating leads within the accounting profession, it really hinges on developing that deep understanding of their specific pain points.
Definitely.
So that constant battle against time, the complexities of regulations, the everyday challenges of client management.
Right. Those are the things that keep them up at night.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the most successful strategies involve those highly targeted digital approaches.
Yes.
From meticulously building your contact lists to optimizing your online presence through SEO and PPC
Right.
and leveraging those sophisticated email marketing programs that we talked about.
Absolutely.
And remember how important it is to segment your audience.
Right.
And tailor your messaging to those specific needs and priorities of different roles within accounting firms.
It makes a big difference.
From CFOs to tax managers, everyone has their own focus.
Exactly.
And across all your efforts, consistently providing valuable educational content.
Yeah.
That is absolutely paramount for building trust and establishing yourself as a go-to resource in this demanding field.
Couldn't agree more. It's all about providing value.
Exactly. So the insights we've explored today, they really provide a strong and actionable framework for developing those effective lead generation strategies.
Definitely. A lot to think about and put into practice.
Right. And by focusing on those core challenges that accountants face and demonstrating clear, data-backed value in your solutions, you're going to be so much more likely to break through the noise and make those meaningful connections.
Absolutely. It's about showing them that you understand their needs and you have the solutions to help them.
Exactly. So that brings us to a final thought for you to really chew on.
Okay, I like this part.
Given that huge investment that's already happening in marketing within the accounting industry, how can you best position yourself to capture a meaningful share of that market?
Right. How do you stand out?
Exactly. How do you stand out? By directly addressing those core struggles we've talked about
Yeah.
and demonstrating that clear, quantifiable value.
Big questions.
Yeah, big questions. And furthermore, with AI being integrated into accounting practices so rapidly, how can your lead generation efforts actually leverage this trend to connect even more effectively with these tech-savvy professionals
Yeah, that's a good point. You have to stay ahead of the curve.
and offer solutions that are truly aligned with their evolving needs and workflows?
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are the key questions to really explore as you take those next steps.
Lots to think about.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.